Hi everyone, thank you for joining us for another edition of The Challengers, where we go into the world of sports, art, and entertainment and see if there are other heavyweights that can give the best a run for its money. And in this episode, we're all about open world video games. We are challenging what many gamers consider the best in this genre, which is Bethesda's Skyrim. The fifth installment of the Elder Scrolls saga, Skyrim was released by developers Bethesda in 2011. Set in a medieval fantasy world, Skyrim had endless quests, side missions, loads of places to explore, and of course, a rewarding gameplay system that kept you coming back for more. By November 2016, it had sold over 30 million copies and was ranked by Edge magazine and Game Insider as the #1 game of all time. Quite an achievement, but we'd like to see if this can be challenged. Is this really the most engaging open-world game ever created? Joining us from Singapore is a gamer since birth, and I can attest to this because he is my own brother. Ladies and gentlemen, the creative director and co-founder of General Interactive, Mark Fillon. But if you don't mind, for this show, I shall be calling him the name I've always known him by, which is Jay. Jay, what's up, man?
Hey bro, doing good. Thanks for having me over. Episode number 3. I'm part of the inaugural season. All's well, yeah, all's well. Over here in Singapore, we just got out of lockdown, but I'm still too afraid to head out because of all the crowds. It's kind of scary, which means I get more time to work on the game that I'm working on.
Yeah, tell us about that. So we know this, right? We know that there's a game on the horizon. It's a very exciting game. It's called Chinatown Detective Agency. And just from the name, it's very intriguing. Tell us more about that.
Chinatown Detective Agency is a point-and-click adventure with a twist, because it's inspired by all those classic 90s Sierra and LucasArts games, but also, and this is sort of the hook, but also, where in the world is Carmen Sandiego? If you've ever played that classic game, you'll know that it requires real-world research to crack clues, to solve cases. So Chinatown Detective Agency is sort of like that. It's a point-click adventure, but you'll have to actually Google or search on Wikipedia for answers to solve cases and find leads and solve crimes. And yeah, we're right in the thick of it.
Not a lot of people know this, but you told me this when I came to visit you. I came to visit you and you were busy because you were working as a guide at a museum.
Yes, so I'm actually a volunteer docent with the Singapore National Heritage Board. I've been assigned to the Indian Heritage Center, which you still haven't visited, and I think you should the next time you come
will.
over.
I'll be very happy to. But I bring this up because you became a guide for the museum as part of your research for your game.
Yeah, exactly. They think well no, I mean, I am interested in becoming, it's very fun to do. It's very fun being a docent at a museum, but yes, precisely that. It's because I learn a lot about the history of Singapore, which is tied into the game because the game takes place in Singapore in the year 2032. So I'm learning a lot about the history being a docent.
Okay, and basically all of those different things that you've learned about the places in Singapore is what fuels the design, the gameplay, because you go pretty deep into the history and the heritage of this of the setting of your game, and your game is primarily set in Singapore.
Correct. One of the things that we were afraid of doing was creating a game based in Singapore. Using a lot of its history and heritage and not getting it right. We didn't want to get called out by the locals for being too superficial when it's not just the setting. It's not just a setting for the video game. The entire history and the culture of Singapore and Southeast Asia in general, we try to keep it authentic. So yeah, so definitely being close to that as a docent with the Heritage Board really helps.
Very cool. So I think that's a really nice lead-in into what we're going to do today. So you talked about the importance of research and developing a rich, intricate world for your player to get lost in. And that is exactly what we will be talking about today, which is a genre of games called open world gaming, right? Or open world video games. So, Chinatown Detective Agency, a slightly different genre. One thing it does have in common is the rich world building. But moving on to open world video games, this has been something that you and I have been fascinated about since we were teenagers. Or rather, when I was a teenager and you were a wee little toddler.
Yeah, but I think that was really helpful because I got to watch you play through those games and really observe the game design, the level design.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of fun. Yeah, you were the player and I was just, I was the audience.
And talking about open world video games, so it started. I think it was Grand Theft Auto, the very first Grand Theft Auto. That was our first exposure to open world games, and from there we went on to Final Fantasy VII, all the different Final Fantasies, all the different RPGs that we could get our hands on. We were living in Karama, so most of our games were bootlegs, and they came in. There was no English translation. It was a lot of fun. But fast forward to 2000, the 2000 years, and the industry has evolved so much, and out comes this one game that changes everything.
Oh man, there was a lot of anticipation for the launch of the game. I took 2 weeks off from work just to play that game. So I played Skyrim from start to finish in 14 days, and I actually had to use up my work days just to play it. It was incredible. It was incredible, not because it introduced anything completely new or novel, but it was amazing because it perfected a lot of things that other games before that came before it had already introduced. So and I'm sure we'll get into that later, but it perfected a lot of the things that Fallout and the past Elder Scrolls and GTA introduced in the mid 2000s. So it was a mind blowing game.
So Jay, you came up with 5 other alternatives, right? To
That's right.
5 other open world video games that are possible contenders for the title of the best ever open world video game. Okay. And it's going to be very hard comparing them to Skyrim. And we're not saying at all, calling all the gamers out there, talking to all of you. I know how very fanatical you are about Skyrim. We're just thinking and trying to be intelligently analytic about how these other games fare compared to Skyrim. And possibly because of your personal taste, you might find one of them to be slightly better or more to your liking. I think that's a fair criteria for what we're going to do today.
Yeah, but also I'd like to add there are whole groups of people out there who probably believe that one of these games we're going to cover are the best and Skyrim isn't, and that's completely fine. That's what makes video games so amazing is we have different opinions on things. So yes, I think that's a fair assessment.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough though because I was doing a bit of research. There are several web portals, sources, video game publications that have all said Skyrim is not just number 2 or number 3, but number 1 in the list in the history of video games.
Yeah, not just open world, right? Yeah.
Yeah, not just open world. Like in the history of video games, this is number 1. It's better than Mario. It's better than Final Fantasy VII, Street Fighter. It's better than than anything else that came out there. But we're going to try to see what are the other options when it comes to open world video games.
Awesome.
Released in 2013, Grand Theft Auto 5 is an action-adventure game developed by Rockstar North. Building on the crime drama hijinks of Grand Theft Auto 4, this 5th installment in the series marries great storytelling with numerous activities to engage in, all set in a sprawling geography loosely based on Los Angeles. You get posh neighborhoods, a busy downtown, and you even venture to the eerie places inspired by Area 51 lore. Unlike most open-world games, this also lets you switch between 3 interconnected playable characters, letting you partake in 3 different storylines, each with its own unique nuances.
Ooh, okay. We're starting strong.
Yeah, starting strong. Starting with Grand Theft Auto 5.
See, so as opposed to Skyrim, which really just did a lot of very cool things right and perfected them, I think this whole mechanic of having 3 protagonists, I use air quotes, is really novel and something really new and something that GTA 5 did really well.
Because you could switch between them, and each one has a completely different storyline, attitude, personality. So when you switch between the three different characters, it's like you're playing the three different archetypes of an RPG. You know what I mean? So when you start an RPG, you have to choose whether you're an elf or an orc or a human, and then you're stuck with that character, right? But in Grand Theft Auto 5, you get to play all of them, all three different archetypes, if you will, and you get to switch, and it's a lot of fun.
Totally. And it's a lot of fun too because each character sort of sees the world, the open world of GTA 5 very differently. They react to the environment very differently, for better or for worse. And it really is like playing three different games, simply because of the interactions between character and place, character and environment. That was fantastic. And I'm sure a lot of people will agree that Trevor was an excellent character. Playing through Trevor's missions in the game was really quite an amazing experience. But even the other two characters of Franklin and Michael, incredible. Just the backstories behind their characters was incredible.
Yeah, I do remember when I used to play that game. I always related to Michael, maybe because I have the same name. But he was a family guy. He was basically trying to take care of his family and trying to get out of the business and, one last hit and that's it, or he needs to do something out of necessity more than craziness or ambition. And then you get to play as Franklin, and Franklin is the young guy. So Franklin is almost a remnant from the San Andreas Grand Theft Auto game, right? So he's from the hood. He's a tough guy, but he also has principles. He's very versatile, very capable. And then comes Trevor, and Trevor is just crazy.
Totally. I think Trevor really counterbalances the other two characters in the sense that Franklin is sort of that archetypal character of someone caught in a storm, right? He's just a guy who's trying to make it, right, in the tough city. And he gets involved with these two insane criminals. I was going to say ex-criminals, but they're pretty much still criminals. And Trevor really introduces a lot of comic relief, a lot of chaos. And I want to mention that because GTA, as the series progressed, in my opinion, introduced a lot of order. In the beginning, during the early GTAs, the GTA 3s, the GTA Vice City, there was a lot of chaos in the sense that most of the fun was just causing havoc. But the story and the character building and the world building started to really get in depth with GTA 4 and GTA 5. And
yeah, that's right. I do remember there was another open world game you used to play, and you were crazy about that. What's that game called?
Yeah. No, but that's right, because I was getting to that. That's Saints Row. And
okay.
The contrast is Saints Row really how do you say it owned its chaos, its disorder. It was a lot of fun just crashing into things, blowing things up,
and lots of biologically disproportionate
yes
characters in the game.
Biologically disproportionate is correct, and they were banking on that, right? And the Just Cause series really they really embrace the chaos. GTA 5 is a really well thought through, well organized story, and Trevor is the wild card, right? Trevor's the wild card, and I really like him for that.
And I think Grand Theft Auto 6 is coming out, and it's going to be one of the flagship releases for the PS5, right?
Yeah, and there's not a lot of details released or leaked yet, but you can rest assured that this is probably going to be another technical masterpiece. It's probably going to be a larger open world. It's probably going to have a lot of more interesting mechanics. Before we finish, I wanted to ask you, because this is an ongoing theme with open world games. The lovely thing about open world games, and because they're open world, is a lot of the fun things you can do don't revolve around the main quests. Right, it's the little mini games.
Oh yeah,
it's the little mini games and the little things you can do. What did you like to do playing GTA 5 that didn't revolve around the quest?
Oh, so many things. So one of them is looking for the UFOs. One of them is looking for the UFOs, and they still haven't figured it out, right?
No, I think they have. Or have they? Or am I thinking about Red Dead Redemption? I think it's like an ongoing gag with Rockstar Games.
With Rockstar.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of the things I liked. I like to do. I like to, I enjoyed looking for the UFOs. It got a bit creepy though, huh? Rockstar knows how to creep you out. The deeper you get into that, especially later with Red Dead Redemption 2, when we talk about the man in the suit.
I don't even want to talk about that stuff, man. Well, and secondly, because I haven't played Red Dead Redemption 2, but yeah, that stuff gets creepy, man.
Yeah. I mean, all of these games, they always have this element of suspenseful horror, a bit of the occult going on. Even Fallout 4 is really good for that.
Oh yeah.
But that is it's a good point. That's one of the few things I like to do. It's the side missions, the side quests, the ability to grow your collection of cars, to go to the casino, that kind of thing. Those are all great, right? Definitely you have a rich amount of things that you can do in Grand Theft Auto 5 if you're interested in all of those different activities.
Great. Personally, I like flying. I like flying airplanes around GTA 5. It's a lot of fun.
When you said flying, I thought what you meant was literally flying, as in like on a jetpack.
Oh, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a mod out there where you can
I've seen the mods. The mods are crazy, dude.
Oh,
you get to be the Hulk. You just jump up in the air.
Amazing.
You never
stuff.
land.
That's another thing that makes open world games so amazing. Don't even let me get started on Skyrim mods, right? Skyrim mods, GTA mods. Oh, amazing.
Fallout mods.
Jeez, amazing.
Yeah. Released in 2018, Red Dead Redemption 2 is another action-adventure game developed and published by Rockstar Games. A prequel to 2010's Red Dead Redemption, the game explores the early days of the Van der Linde gang as they try to pull off one last big score. Set in 1899, we play mainly as the conflicted outlaw Arthur Morgan in an adventure that sees him and his gang explore the western, Midwest, and southern United States. Untamed natural landscapes and abundant wildlife combined with interesting characters throughout the world, giving you a one-of-a-kind experience.
So I never got to play Red Dead Redemption 2. I did get to play thoroughly Red Dead Redemption 1. I only know Red Dead Redemption 2 because whenever I come over, you're playing it. No, but if there's one thing that stands out with Red Dead Redemption 2, it's that it proves an open world game can have a really, really, really good Hollywood quality script. Almost like playing Red Dead Redemption is like playing a Greek tragedy. Incredibly written. The characters, the character development. I don't think I've ever played a game with such rich character development. And it really uses the story to up the stakes. It really feels like you've got a stake in these people's lives. That's a very cliche thing to say, but with Red Dead Redemption, it really, really feels that way, and it's just incredible. Even the side things you get to do, right? Like the gambling, and I know that you are your second job in life is a fisherman in Red Dead Redemption 2.
Indeed, it is. Indeed, it is, good sir. I fancy myself as an expert in salmon, sea bass, and pickerel.
That's wait. So because I've never played it, you get to sell the fish, right?
You get to sell the fish. There are many different kinds of fish that you can catch, but the more exotic it is, and there are lots of exotic fish in that game. The more exotic it is, the higher price you could get for it. But that's not even the main purpose of fishing, Jay. I mean, fishing in general, my friend. I've never fished in real life, so I can only talk video game fishing. The purpose of it is really just to contemplate life.
Oh, okay. It's very therapeutic, is it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, there's nothing better than turning on your PS4, okay, getting the load screen to finish with its nonsense. And finally, when the game's about to begin, you're so excited, you're like so impatient. What you do is you get your fishing pole, you go to the pond, you fish, and you do nothing.
Wait. Wait. I've got another question tied into that. I know you can cook the fish and prepare a meal, right?
Yeah,
Have you ever found yourself?
you can.
You're fishing. You catch a nice sea bass, or I don't know if it's sea bass. You catch a nice salmon. You prepare it. You cook it.
Yeah.
And you get hungry. So you actually prepare yourself a fish meal in real life. Have you ever done that?
Let's just say that there is a direct relationship between the sales of Jaya Grocer in my neighborhood and the amount of salmon and sea bass that they have been selling, and the month in which Red Dead Redemption 2 became a staple in my living room. Direct relationship.
No, because whenever I come up, I come across an eating or cooking mechanic in a video game, I get hungry and I want to.
Yeah, and that's something you introduced, or is that a secret? That's something that you introduced in your
No,
game,
it's true.
right? I mean, Singapore is famous for for its street food and delectable wares. So one of the things you introduce in the game is being able to sample the different dishes of the places that you could visit in that game, right?
Yes, and again, it's been a tough few weeks doing that mechanic, because every time we'd work on that mechanic, I'd get hungry, and I feel really bad for our artist. I feel really bad for our artist.
I thought what you meant. I thought what you meant by that it's tough is that it's tough to develop, not that you get hungry and you get distracted.
Oh no, forget about the really difficult coding and all that stuff. It's really just getting hungry, and I feel really bad for Ricardo who actually created those dishes. Who rendered them in pixel art. Because he'd tell me he'd crave Singaporean food, and he lives all the way in Brazil, so he can't really satisfy that craving.
Dude, video game food. There's always food in the game, and that's something that I think is related to anime style storytelling, where everyday things like food help enhance the and move the story along. So Final Fantasy always had food in it. Red Dead Redemption 2, it had it. San Andreas had it. You're bringing it as well to your own game.
Yes, that's totally right. I remember I've got a distant memory of you playing Final Fantasy VII, and there's a scene in Midgar, right, where Cloud can have some Korean barbecue or something.
Yes,
and
you go on a date. Is that the date you go on a date with Aerith, right?
I think so. I think that's it. And even though the food was badly rendered, right? The graphics were very very minimal. It was very immersive. I think introducing food and slice of life elements into open world games really gives it that that next level of immersion.
You got sidetracked there a bit, huh? Red Dead Redemption 2. So all together, all combined, so you've got great storytelling. Arthur, the main character, one of the most lovable characters I've ever had the pleasure of playing, especially when you start to interact with his love interest. And I don't want to give away too much of the game, but it's heartbreaking what happens to him, because of the path that he's chosen in life. Very immersive world, the Wild West. But not just the Wild West. The Wild West, as it was encountering a change in the environment because of the technological revolution happening at that particular point in time. The outlaws were they found themselves being slowly phased out of society.
And again, that sort of goes back to what we were talking about earlier. The how do you say that? I mean, I'm just using the term loosely, but the set design, right? Whenever you're whenever you're in town or whenever you're in a city, the set design, the ambience, the atmosphere, the non-playable characters, the dialogue, it all just comes together to create this really, really rich environment. And this is just one piece of a larger open world map, right? It's just one corner of the very, very large map. Can you remind me what the largest city in that game is called again?
Blackwater? No. It has a French name. Saint Denis. Saint Denis.
Saint Denis. Yeah. Saint Denis. Yeah.
Saint Denis with its parlors and Chinese restaurants.
Incredible, right?
Yeah.
Just really incredible. It's really incredible.
Makes me want to go fishing now.
You got some fish in the refrigerator?
I do indeed. I think I'm going to eat some fish tonight. Released in 2015, The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt is an action fantasy game developed and published by Polish developer CD Projekt. The game is based on the Witcher fantasy novels by Andrzej Sapkowski, which centers on the protagonist Geralt of Rivia, a warrior for hire who specializes in slaying supernatural creatures. The game sees you traveling around the fantasy world of different cities and societies, each with their own culture and norms, but all of which are dealing with a present civil war, while also preparing for an oncoming encounter with underworld forces called the Wild Hunt. Mighty with the sword and smooth with the ladies, Geralt is an iconic character with an honor code that makes him a lovable character to play.
I think the writing, again, for The Witcher 3, the writing is just incredible. It's set in a very, I would say, overused setting, right? Fantasy world, high fantasy world, swords and magic. Yeah, and it's got swords, magic, and monsters. But I think it's a much more mature take, almost sort of like a Game of Thrones. But I don't watch Game of Thrones, so I don't know if that's a fair comparison. But really,
no, it's not.
It's not. Okay. But it's
In fact, Witcher is on Netflix, and there is no other show like it because it is just not a show. It's just not meant to be a show. Either that or the writing is it just doesn't capture the magic of the game.
No, it doesn't. And look, The Witcher is all about Geralt of Rivia, right? Like it's the world through his eyes. And for the longest time, I held off on playing any of the games in the series because I was very much a Bethesda game snob. Right, I only played Fallout and I only played Elder Scrolls games, open world games. I didn't touch the Witcher games, but I remember I played The Witcher 3 during a time when I didn't have a lot going on, so I had a lot of spare time, free time. So I picked up The Witcher 3. I was blown away. It's just incredible. The little things, the soundtrack, the lore, the voice acting. It really is like pretty much a play, you know. It's pretty much a stage play of grand proportions. It's very well written. The world wherein the game takes place is incredibly well done. I believe that it's not even a very large area compared to like massive games like GTA 5. It's not too large an area, but they managed to put in enough cities, these little hamlets, villages, these little forests that really brought the lore to life. And I was just blown away. It's just an incredible game.
One thing about Witcher 3 that I really liked is how, like you said, it's not as big a world as Elder Scrolls worlds are, or even for that matter, Red Dead Redemption universe world. But each of those places in the Witcher 3 universe it's so distinct in terms of its architecture, its societal norms, its the costume of the people. So it really does feel like you're moving to many different parts of the world, even though there are not that many to move to. So so for example, the seafaring folk of that little state, I think they're called Skellige.
Skellige, that's right.
Skellige. So Skellige, the seafaring folk there are so very different from the northern folk who are all about tall buildings and civilized social norms. So all those little differences I think are so nicely pronounced that it's a really nice experience when those open up and you can explore the different places.
And again, what I'd also like to touch on is just the just the maturity of the content, in the sense that a lot of the storylines, a lot of the plots, a lot of the missions, sort of like GTA 5, really tackle the human condition without any filter. It really captures human tragedy very well. Even though a lot of them committed sins, that's sort of what I felt playing Witcher 3. A lot of the people that Geralt comes across had it coming, but I don't know. I feel like the writing of the backstory of the lore really just helps just deliver a really heartfelt plot, a heartfelt story. And even though Geralt himself is a very well written character, he really is just a witness, right? He really is just your eyes and your hands in the game. The real meat of it are the other characters, the peripheral characters.
One thing about Witcher 3 that we definitely have to talk about. How cool is that card game, bro? I haven't played like a side mission, side quest activity in any game as engaging as that since the card games of Final Fantasy VIII.
I've been playing Gwent, the standalone game. I've been.
There's a standalone game.
There's a standalone game. It's like the designers of. I don't know if the designers of the game borrowed the mechanics from an already existing card game, or if they came up with it originally. If it's the latter, like wow, like they created a really good card game. It's very addictive. Yeah. I love going through the towns.
What would you say to a few rounds
and you could have a really important mission, right? Like you need to save the world, or you need to prevent like these like undead folk from massacring a town. But you're like, hang on. Do you play Gwent? That's amazing.
Let's play cards.
It's like
wouldn't be bad.
So tell me, Geralt of Rivia, are you ready to slay the dragon from the cave? And Geralt's like, indeed I am. Do you play Gwent? And then all of a sudden that music kicks in, right?
Yeah, it's so much fun.
And you're playing
Gwent. And then when you're done playing, right, and if you win, you get his card. Thank you very much. All right, let's go kill that dragon. It just feels so like disproportionate.
Released in 2015, Fallout 4 is a post-apocalyptic action game developed by Bethesda Game Studios. Set in 2287, 10 years after the events of Fallout 3, the game lets you create your own character who will go on various missions and meet an interesting array of settlers, factions, robot communities, and outlaws, all spread across a map of Boston and the surrounding Massachusetts region known as the Commonwealth. A unique feature of the game is the Settlement Builder, which lets you create and maintain a community of survivors, developing their food source, defense systems, and even inter-settlement commerce. Meanwhile, Fallout New Vegas was released in 2009 and developed by Obsidian Entertainment. A spin-off of the Fallout series, the game takes you to Arizona, California, and Nevada. Although made by another developer, many gamers believe New Vegas is in fact the best installment in the Fallout series, with its dark themes and haunting moral dilemmas.
This one was one of the first few games that really did it well in the sense that you could feel the consequences of your choices, of whether whether you generated enough good or bad karma. You could sort of, the world changes according to your choices. Now it's taken for granted, right? It's sort of a staple of open world video games, but Fallout really pushed the boundaries of this one, and it was and it's really well done. And
I think a game that popularized the karma system for a lot of newcomers to RPGs is Fable. Do you remember Fable?
Yeah, Fable from Lionhead Studios, the defunct studio. Oh, and the rumors that they're coming back to create a new Fable game for the new Xbox console, but those are just rumors.
And apparently, you can bring back your old character. Apparently, your old character, right? Is that the rumor?
Oh man, I don't even know if I can recover my old character anymore. But that'd be great. But yes, you're right. Fable did that really well as well. It's not just one choice. You know what I mean? A lot of RPGs are built on that foundation of making that one crucial choice at a point in the game that could that will help determine which way the plot goes. For Fallout, it changed the world perpetually. It was a persistent change in the world. Just like with the first Fallout to come out on consoles, Fallout 3, I don't know if there's anyone who's not played the game, but just to be on the safe side, no spoilers, one decision could completely affect one entire location and its people forever within the game, and that sort of ran through to the preceding Fallouts. And I think the reason that we're covering Fallout 4 and New Vegas simultaneously is because this is a very contentious topic. Fallout 4 was panned by players for its shallow story, but if we're talking open world experience, it's incredible. Fallout New Vegas did really well on the story front because it was it was written by Obsidian, who are masters of RPG storytelling. But their open world experience wasn't a huge leap from Fallout 3. Fallout 4, and I know you love this mechanic in particular because I also really liked it. The base building, the settlement building mechanic was amazing. Being able to build up settlements and try to restart civilization across the entire map was really fun.
It's very interesting. I was watching a YouTube documentary about Bethesda, and apparently that function of the game, that feature of the game, was not even intended to be introduced to begin with. It was basically the result of them figuring out a new physics mechanics for the game.
Yeah.
And once they figured out the new physics, they thought, hey, we can actually allow people to play with the physics of the game and create, physical objects that could be part of their settlement.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's so my kids are always playing what is that game? It's not Roadblocks. The other one, Minecraft. They're always playing Minecraft, right? And they think that I'm doing the same thing. I scoff at that game. So I go, what are you guys doing? Why don't you play a serious game? And then they see me play Fallout 4 and I'm pretty much just doing the same thing. I'm building houses and buildings and warehouses.
Yeah. No, it is. It's very much that, but in a more how do you say, in a more prefab way. Fallout 4 was really great as an open world experience. First of all, the map was much larger. The setting of post-apocalypse Boston was really cool. I love that mission where you had to follow the Freedom Trail. That was really great.
Yeah.
But even with New Vegas, I mean, oh man, what other city in the U.S. could lend itself so well to like post-apocalypse than Las Vegas? That was also
Vegas, I think, was quite dark. I mean, it felt like a Mad Max kind of universe, because it's set in Nevada as well. It's very deserty. It's quite dark compared to Fallout 3 and Fallout 4, because there's a universe that Fallout belongs in which they didn't discover miniaturization, right? So they never got into computers. So everything in that world pretty much was still stuck in the atomic age. So that universe is still stuck in the 50s almost. So you have a lot of very Americana style architecture, industrial design. So the cars, the roads, everything, every object in the household was rooted in 50s Americana design. And even the soundtrack was also that kind of vintage rock and roll, and rhythm and blues. That really created an atmosphere in my head. I don't know if it had the same effect on you.
Totally. The soundtrack. I don't think there's a better choice and design of soundtrack than the Fallout series. Incredible soundtrack that feels out of place in a dark, destroyed world, right? Because a lot of the subject material of the songs are very like jolly and like very cheerful and lighthearted and very innocent. And you're listening to this while you're creeping through like a destroyed vault where all manner of like atrocious human experimentation was taking place. Really great juxtaposition or lack thereof. But yes,
Quentin Tarantino-like, actually.
Very Tarantino-like, right? Oh man, yeah. I just remembered that scene in Reservoir Dogs, right? With stuck in the middle with you.
Stuck in the middle with you. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. So no, but I just wanted to add on to something you said. That whole modernist architecture, the entire game still being stuck in that era, was really haunting and really cool because this was the golden age of America. This was post World War II, right? This was America's great rise.
Boom time.
Yeah, it's great rise to a superpower status. but here it is in ruins. It's oh man.
A little scary too, considering what's happening to the world right now. It almost feels like, like a strange prediction of, this could happen if we're not careful.
Especially with all these countries leaving the nuclear armaments treaties, it's not looking so bright.
And for a while, we thought we made progress there, guys. Released in 2016, No Man's Sky is developed and published by independent studio Hello Games. Set in a distant future when interstellar travel is possible, No Man's Sky is a vast open-world adventure that focuses on the pillars of exploration, survival, combat, and trading. Through procedural generation, players can constantly explore new planets with their own unique ecosystem and sentient beings, with whom you can either battle or trade. This is a wild card for us, right? So most of the games we talked about are made by the big giant studios. Now here comes an independent developer who wanted to play with the big boys and created something, in my opinion, that is just, whoa, super ambitious.
And I was adamant about including this in the list because of the advent of new game development technology. Open world games are no longer the purview of AAA studios, right? Hello Games, like you said, were very ambitious in scope. And I don't know if you know this, but the launch of the game was marred in controversy and really, really bad player feedback. And I applaud the developers for fighting and soldiering through that dark period, because now, after a lot of iterations and a lot of fixes, you have a really, 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 really good open world game in No Man's Sky. And
to their credit, they never charged you for those updates. They kept creating new updates and and fixes and so on, and they're free. They're free to download.
That's true, and I think that's a very good step from the developers. And I also know why you want to talk about this, because I know you're a huge physics and astrophysics fan. But the scale of this game is incredible simply because of procedural generation, right? And procedural generation is a very economical way of world building, of creating open world games, because all you need are a bunch of assets and a bunch of algorithms, and a program will do that for you, put together a seemingly infinite number of worlds, so you don't actually need to manually create worlds. And this results in some pretty fantastic worlds, because for anyone who hasn't played No Man's Sky, even the wildlife on the planets are procedurally generated. So you'll have really strange looking creatures and animals sometimes that are completely ridiculous, but it still feels like it's within the tone of the game. Really lovely game. I think it did a lot for independent game developers.
This is what I find to be ridiculously good about No Man's Sky. So they were probably sitting there going like, okay, so The Witcher guys, you go from town to town. Grand Theft Auto, you go city to city. Fallout, you might even go from one state to another. We're going to go solar system to another solar system to another galaxy.
It's incredible. And I'm not sure about the specifics of it, but the scales are real. Like the sizes of the planets are massive. Like if you wanted to, you could spend your entire time playing No Man's Sky on one planet, right? On one planet, because it's to scale. Now, No Man's Sky has ridiculous amounts of solar systems. The scale is just mind-boggling.
That reminds me of this radio commercial. You remember? It was for this toolkit, this handy tool in the US. The radio commercial was, Bob is building a diorama of the universe to scale.
Well,
you remember that?
No, I don't remember that. What is that?
Keep bolting those 7 rings of Saturn and keep building the universe that's also expanding in every possible direction.
But that's the thing, right? Like, it just goes to show what an ambitious undertaking No Man's Sky is. But that's the power of of basically computer and game dev technology. It's just making a lot of things possible these days.
Yeah, I think with that said as well, you've seen Ready Player One, right? So that's basically a future where people know it's basically a video game, a video game flavored version of the Matrix, where people become so disenfranchised with reality that they're willing to just live their entire existence inside a video game. And I think what a lot of these open world games are doing is it's creating that possibility in the future where it's possible for you to just live in that new reality that is more preferable than the one that is right outside your doors.
Yeah, that's and I mean I sort of believe that reflects a little bit of the reality of a lot of gamers' mindsets. I think this entire COVID situation has just reinforced that. Video games have served as a sanctuary or as an escape for a lot of people who are slowly starting to sort of disconnect with the real world. And this ties into our topic of open world games. It really does offer a very fun, exciting alternative to the real world. No matter how geeky that sounds, for a lot of gamers, that's really their mindset.
Yeah, because you could do everything in that world now. Even biological functions, such as eating, going to the toilet, meeting people, your social interactions, all of that could be done in that alternative world. It's possible for you to just live there. So it's a little sad if you ask me, but also quite exciting. You never have to worry about, you never have to worry about some collection company calling you and asking you to return some unreturned library books.
They've got collection companies doing those now. Unreturned library books. Sir, you're going to be in a lot of trouble if you don't return War and Peace by Wednesday.
Sir, we know where you live. We know where you live. We will come there. We will come there. We will tell your boss what you did unless you return War and Peace.
Hey man, like that's the future of the world. It's becoming more and more of a police state. You can't even borrow books anymore.
Now the question is, out of all the games that we talked about, is it possible that one of them could be almost comparable on the same level as Skyrim? And if not, could it possibly be even better than Skyrim? What do you think, Jay?
Okay, so this was tough because these are 5 really good games. And a lot of people can and will disagree with me because when it comes to open world games, a person will always have 1 or 2 criteria with which to judge it under. Whether it's the scale of the world, how many different activities outside of the main quest you can choose to do, stuff like that. For me, it's balance. For me, it's I've seen what games games that focus completely on the open world aspect without a story can be, and those games aren't very rewarding. They can often be directionless. And on the other end of the spectrum, you've got very linear games with rich stories but not enough freedom. And I think the best open world games fall somewhere in the middle. And for me, that's GTA 5. Because GTA 5 offers you a lot of freedom and a lot of content, right? I've spent weeks on end doing things outside of the main quest. But at the same time, there's this really amazing story underneath it. 3 very well developed characters and just really, really good script. Just a really, really good script. And when I finished the game, and I know people listening who've played the game will probably have experienced 1 or 2 or maybe all of the different endings, but the way it ended, the way it wrapped up, the way a very, very chaotic, tragic story comes to a head, and when those credits rolled, it was just a really, I've never felt that way about a game in a while. It's one of those once in a generational games, sort of like, especially in terms of storytelling, like your Max Paynes and your GTA 5s of the world. So GTA 5 is, if there is a challenger.
Final Fantasy 7.
Final Fantasy 7. I'm sorry, Final Fantasy 7. If there is one game that legitimately challenges Skyrim as the best open world game, at least in recent history, it's probably GTA 5.
I really love not just that game, but what that entire franchise did for the industry. And let's not forget, this is also a pretty controversial franchise. It raised a lot of morality questions and made people, stop and think, are video games making our kids insane? And it revisited some questions from the past, from the Mortal Kombat years, if you remember that. But then it evolved in a way that, they decided, guys, you don't really understand us. We're not about the glorified violence, and what do you call it? The unjustified use of force in video games and allowing you to do whatever it is that you want to do. They went beyond that. Like you said, they transcended that and created an art form that had so much beauty and storytelling about it. Now when we talk about GTA, you're no longer thinking about the juvenile part of the game that used to be its biggest feature. Now you're talking about the storytelling. So that evolution is pretty admirable. It also makes for a very immersive kind of game. I would agree with you on pretty much everything except one thing.
Oh, and what is that?
You cannot fish in that game. Yeah, but there you go, guys. Grand Theft Auto 5. It came out years ago, but it is still available now on PS4, and a lot of people are picking it up and discovering it for the first time.
And more importantly, if you haven't played the game that started off this conversation, Skyrim, it's also still available. And 9 years later, it's still a really, really good game. So please do try it out.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you so much. What else can I say, man? When you talk video games, you never run out of things to say.
No, you can't. We can do this. We can do this twice as long.
Yeah, we're not even talking about the characters we created on Skyrim. Like, what's your character on Skyrim?
Always the archer, because I'm scared of melee upfront confrontation.
You're like the sniper in Counter-Strike.
Yeah. The cheap kills kind of guy.
Pretty much it. Thank you for giving us your time today, Jay. I know how busy you are. You're still in the middle of developing that game of yours that a lot of people are very excited about. More than 100% funded on Kickstarter, and you're also porting to Nintendo Switch. Is that right?
Yes, and it was never in the plans, but now it is, thanks to popular demand. It will be releasing on Steam and Humble, and potentially GOG, and of course the Switch sometime in the first quarter or second quarter of 2021 next year.
Amazing stuff. Keep us up to date. We'd love to hear more about it. Please update us whenever you have something new that we can share with our viewers.
Will do. Thanks a lot, bruh. Good talking to you about video games.
So there you have it. Skyrim, still great after all these years. But if you want to try out the other games that we talked about on this show, they're available on Steam for PC, or the Xbox, or the PlayStation Network, respectively. From Kuala Lumpur, this is your host, Michael Fillon, saying thank you, stay safe, and never stop being a challenger.